Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leah Smalley. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid Services here at the Coordinating Board, and thank you for joining today. We have a slightly different type of presentation. This webcast was put together as a kind of a kickoff for the fiscal year that just began, and it's the FY20 fiscal year. So that's the 2019-20 academic year. And the reason we put this webcast together was to really make sure that if you've worked for financial aid a long time and you're familiar with the state programs, that we make sure that you know what's available to you and that you know where to find things. And if you're new to state financial aid or with the coordinating board, that you kind of get to know who we are and what we do. So that's really the focus of today's webcast. So without further ado, if you saw on the flyer, it said, who is Financial Aid Services? So I want to touch on that. So you may have heard the term student financial aid programs and heard different names and talked to various people. And so student financial aid programs is the actual department, and it's comprised of various areas and all dedicated to different customers. So we have our main borrower services area, which is the largest area and has various subsections within it, and they deal primarily with the student loan borrowers. Then we have central office, which deals with reporting and the legislators and does a lot of the administrative rules, does a lot of the just dealing with the legislative sessions. So we have that dedicated team. And then we have financial aid services. And this area was created to support institutions. So while we do some student support for eligibility, our primary focus is institutional financial aid. So I wanted to go through our team with you so you understand kind of the names and who you talk with all the time and really get a feel for what we do. So Financial Aid Services is a team that's comprised of, well, it was about 9 people, and we've had some changes, but the director is Deshae Reed, and then under Deshae is myself, Leah Smalley. I'm the assistant director. And we have 2 main areas within our team. We have a training and communications team, and then we have an operations team. So training and communications consists of 2 program specialists, Sophia Rodriguez and Troyling Johnson. And then we just hired a technical writer named Teresa Redding, and she joined our team in July. And she is here to help support all of the communications and the materials that we create. Not only for financial aid services, but our entire student financial aid programs team. We also have our operations, which we have 3 accountants. We have Joella Martinez, Rafael Villarreal, and Erin, I am going to butcher her last name, Vicanese. And the 3 of them do all of our operational pieces here in financial aid services. So for those of y'all that have known us for a while, you may be saying, hey, wait a minute, there's somebody missing. I feel like there's a name missing from the group. And that would be Sheba Spears. Sheba has accepted a position here at the coordinating board to move over to our internal audit team. And that's going to be effective at the end of this month. So while we are very, very, very sad to see her move over, we're excited that she'll still, 1, be with the coordinating board, and 2, she's still going to be working with institutions because she's going to be doing auditing and institutional support over in the audit area. So if you were wondering where her name was, she is going to be moving over. So that is our team in a nutshell. We have a very, we call it our small but mighty team. And I want to go through what exactly do we do. I think that there's sometimes kind of confusion since the coordinating board has changed over the years on kind of what gets routed through different areas. So I thought I'd map that out for you today. So as you can see on the screen, we have a lot of state aid programs. We have our 3 signature grant programs, which includes Texas Grant, TEOG, and TEG. We have the loan programs, which is the Be On Time, College Access Loan, Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program. And then we have what are called our special special programs, which include work study, our work study mentorship, and then all of the exemption and waiver programs. And we have over 50 at this point. So don't worry, I'm not going to go through all of those today, but just wanted to kind of paint a picture of we have a lot of different programs with different rules, different policies, procedures, and definitely we have a lot of money funneled through our area. Each year, millions and millions of dollars go through our area, so it takes a lot of different coordination and processing procedures to keep everything on track. So let's talk about how the money flows through financial aid services. We have a dedicated operations team. Oops, I skipped right over that. I'm so sorry, the slides are out of order from what I thought. So before I jump into operations, what I had next was our joint team functions. So a lot of the things that we do in our area are to support the customers, like I mentioned. So a few of those include answering phones. We have our institutional helpline that allows institutions to call with questions on a variety of topics, and we are open from 8 to 5 each day to make sure that we can answer those calls. But we also have the TFAC line, which is the Texas Financial Aid Information Center, and that's a statutory required phone line that allows the public to call in with eligibility questions, how to apply. So we get all sorts of calls that come through that line. But our team here in Financial Aid Services does field those phone calls. We also reply to incoming inquiries, and those are both online and through the mail. So sometimes we get people writing in physical letters to us requesting information, or they have questions. So we answer those and send them something back through the mail. We also received online inquiries, which are done through the Contact Us link, which we really promote so that we can track and monitor those inquiries. So again, our team here does process those on a daily basis. We try and do those first come, first serve, and if they require research, then we have some steps in place to make sure that those go through the right process as well. The third one down on the screen that says grant access, our team also sets up portal access for MoveIt, CBPass, and HelmNet, and we also help those that are trying to subscribe to our listserv, which we call GovDelivery. We set those up as well. So we have dedicated staff that review those submissions, and we set up the accounts, and then we get back to those customers via email. And then lastly, we collaborate on projects. And the few that I listed there, this is in no way all of them, but these are just a few examples. But each year we work as a team on Net Price Calculator to get that set up and rolled over for the schools and to collect all the data. We have a project currently going on to rebuild the online loan reporting tool that was available through the HelmNet system. So that's something that all of us are going to be working on to get tested and make sure that it's comprehensive and that it's running smoothly. And then most recently, the grant payments project. That was a big project that required testing from our team and development so that we could get that up and rolling so that schools could request their funds through the CBPass portal. So that's what those are. So individually within the team, we have the two areas, like I mentioned. We have our operations team, and then we have our training and communications. So first, I'm going to kind of go through operations and what we handle. So operations does a lot of different things. The first one is memorandums of understanding. Though that slide that I listed all the financial aid programs, in order to participate in those, an institution has to sign an agreement, which we call a memorandum of understanding, every 4 years. And that allows them to basically do business with the coordinating board and to receive those funds. If you don't have a memorandum of understanding, then you can't participate. So every 4 years, our area helps to coordinate and route those through to our legal team, track those with the institutions, and kind of just keep track of those so that we can make sure that everyone's within compliance. So that's a very big undertaking that we do. Luckily, again, it's only every 4 years, but it's coming up in 2021. So be prepared for that. If you're a school that deals with the Memorandum of Understanding, we just went through it not too long ago, but man, 4 years sure seems to go by quick. So it's already going to be 2020 soon. Can you believe that? The other thing that this team does are the allocations and reallocations. So each biennium, the legislators appropriate out money to the coordinating board, and they have us divvy out those funds based on allocation calculations. And every single program has a different calculation. And that allows us to distribute the money to the institutions based on a lot of different items, so that we can make sure that all the money is being sent out correctly. So we don't just divvy up the money evenly. It has to be done based on how big the school is, their student population, and a lot of different factors. So this area here takes that calculation and the money that we're given, and we do an allocation calculation, which we send out to the schools, and it divvies up all those funds for each institution to review. So that's one of the things they do. Another is reallocations, and we only do that for the Texas Beyond Time program at this point, but that's another function that we do twice a year in November and then again in February. Another piece is the funds request. So up until a month ago, the institutions would request their money that has been allocated to them through a funds request form, and that was done online. About a month ago, we rolled out a new system through CBPAS that allows the institutions to send those electronically through the portal, and we've been getting those requests for a few weeks now, and we would love to remind people that we need to get those through in order to send out payment to the institutions. For those of you that have sent through requests for funding, just wanted to give you an update that those are being processed. We're starting the payments this week, so if you want to log in and check the status, you can do that online now. We also do return of funds. So at the end of the fiscal year or throughout the year when we have ineligible loan funds, those come back through our area as well so that we can track those funds and use those for reconciliation purposes. So it's another thing that we do. Loan updates and changes. We get a lot of requests on a daily basis to update things like loan periods, award amounts, disbursement dates, all sorts of stuff. So those come through our area, and we update those in our system, and then we notify the school once it's completed. Reporting requests. Once upon a time, if you remember, if you were here a while back, about a year ago, you could access reports through HelmNet for your loan programs. And that link went away, and it's no longer available to get those requests. So now schools send those through manually. And our operations team runs the requests from our loan system, and then we upload those through MoveIt. So it's a very time-consuming process. So that's one of the reasons we are working to rebuild the loan portal on HelmNet so that schools can have that self-sufficiency and get them on their own. But until then, that's something that we'll continue to provide to the schools. So if you need a report or you're requesting something, you will still send those through to us for the time being. Financial aid database reconciliation. This is always a hot topic. So for new people on the phone, financial aid database is a data collection effort that we do at the coordinating board 3 times a year, and it's required for all institutions to participate. And the reason that we collect this data is because in order to report out to legislators, to come up with statistics and to see how the state of Texas is doing, not only for financial aid programs, but for a lot of different areas, we have to have data. And the only way to get that data is from the institutions or from different areas. So for financial aid services, what we do is we reconcile the money that's paid out to the schools with what the school is reporting back through their file. So when the school sends us data, we have to make sure that that aligns with what we paid. So financial aid services works hand in hand with the schools to make sure that those totals align before the file can be considered complete. So that's what the financial aid database reconciliation process is. And lastly, audits. So audits are completed by our internal audit team, and externally we get audited. So the team here works with them to either explain our procedures, provide ledgers. We do a whole lot of things where we participate in audits. And we also help institutions that are getting audited by providing things that they need to their auditors. So that's how operations is involved in those. So as you can see, there's lots of different moving parts and different things that they are responsible for just outside of the daily activities that I mentioned on the previous slide. So let's move on to the other part of financial aid services team, which is training and communications. Training and communications, like I mentioned, is a group of 2 program specialists that are really dedicated to creating materials and also delivering training. So they're the ones that are going to go out into the field, go to a lot of the conferences, and keep people up to speed on the changes in state financial aid programs. So some of the things that they produce on an annual basis are going to be things like instruction manuals. So your financial aid database manual is one of those as an example. The annual program guidelines, a lot of the institutions rely on these guidelines to make sure that they're administering the programs in alignment with the administrative code. So each year, the program specialists spend a substantial amount of time reviewing those, updating them, and making sure that they're ready to be posted for the schools. They also produce forms and applications. So forms being the return of funds form. That's one example. We also do the state-funded campus-based report. That's another form that they create. We create things like the educational aid application and the TASFA application. So those are some examples of things that they have to update each year, and they go through a very extensive review process. Training events and webcasts like today. They assist me in creating these PowerPoints, getting them posted online, prepping those, and then also, like I mentioned, any training events out in the field. So if we attend any conferences, they help with that, making sure that all the materials have been updated and that they're ready to go. Surveys. Sometimes the coordinating board will send out surveys which we use to collect either feedback or things like when the schools need to opt in and opt out of a program. We used a survey at one point to see how many schools were utilizing the TASFA application. That was about a year ago because we weren't really sure how many schools were doing that. But in order to create a survey, we have to, put all the questions in there and test it and make sure it's working. So, that takes a lot of time and effort to make sure that those are operating correctly so we can gather the data that we need. The websites. We have 2 main websites that we help update. We have our Student Financial Aid Programs Information webpage, which we are going to go through today on this webcast. And that houses all the resources and tools that institutions really need to have access to. And then we have our College for All Texans website. And if you've been around a while, you know that College for All Texans is used by all sorts of people to get information on state programs. But it's not really geared towards institutions. It's really a public-facing site to allow people to get information, but it doesn't talk about processing or timelines or anything like that. So we find that institutions still heavily rely on College for All Texans, but we are trying to shift people over to the Student Financial Aid Programs website because that's the one that has the majority of the resources and tools you're really going to need. So that being said, why don't we talk about those resources and tools? In the very beginning of my Webcast initiative, I had done a similar presentation to this one where I'd gone through the website, but I didn't go into that much detail, and I thought it would be a good idea today to really dig into the web page so that if you're new, you know where to go to find things. If you have been around a while, maybe things have shifted or you've been looking for something, because I get calls all the time saying, hey, I remember this thing y'all used to create. Where did it go? I don't know where it went. And so it can be frustrating on a day-to-day if you don't know where to find something. So I thought this would be a great opportunity with the start of the fiscal year to really highlight the majority of the resources that we have, and you know where to find them. So I'm going to pull up live. If you've had one of these webcasts before, you know I like to do everything live. So I'm going to pull up the Student Financial Aid Program's webpage. Now, you may be wondering, well, wait a minute, I don't know how to get there. That's not the main landing page. So let's start from the beginning. If you go to the Coordinating Board's website by just going to www.thecb.state.tx.us, this is what it's going to look like. This is the main agency page. And we built our web page within it so that schools could easily access this web page. It previously was on another website that was difficult to find, and we got a lot of feedback saying, hey, would be so grateful if you could put it somewhere we could actually find things. And I've received feedback now that you can actually Google things and it'll pop up, whereas before you couldn't find it. So from this main landing page on the Coordinating Board's website, if you go up to Institutional Resources and Programs, the very last one in the list is Student Financial Aid Programs. When you load that, it's going to have our main page, and the first page is really just a summary of all the pages within it. We have our institutional toll-free number that I mentioned. This is the number that the schools can call for assistance between 8 and 5 p.m. We have our online inquiries link, which I'm going to actually go through step by step in just a moment. And we have our customer satisfaction survey. This is your opportunity to tell the coordinating board how we're doing. It doesn't even have to be specific to financial aid services. It can be anything to do with the coordinating board. This is our generic agency survey. So we do heavily rely on that feedback, so feel free, if you have a great experience or maybe not so great experience, to share that with us. News you can use is updated Wednesday or Thursday of each week. We go in and we make sure to align this with anything that's been sent out or posted online so that schools can really stay up to speed on what has changed or if there's any issues or any new materials. So I heavily promote this because at one point, again, we weren't updating it as often as we should, and now it is a set process every week. So this is reliable information that the institutions can count on. We have all of these dedicated pages, which I'm going to go through individually. Before I do that, I want to go through the contact us. We've had some schools who call us, and 9 times out of 10, yes, we're going to point people to the contact us. And the reason we're doing that is because when schools call in, sometimes we don't have the ability to look up what you need in that second. So this allows us to research your issue and to look into the details you provide and provide you something in writing. So we will do our absolute best if you call in to give you a response, but in the event you get pointed to this link, I'm going to walk you through how to fill it out so that it gets to us the most timely way possible. Sometimes we get these over a week's time because they weren't filled out correctly and they get routed throughout our agency, and that doesn't do you any good, and it definitely makes us feel bad because then we don't get to respond to you timely. So when you click on the link, this form is going to pop up. When you fill out this all the different required items, I'm going to explain why each one is so important. When you click on the received from, the institution is critical that you put in there. That helps us know that it's not a student or a parent or a legislator contacting us, it's a school. And then when you get to the institution, this is very helpful when you put in the school's name, because our team is broken up, the small team that I mentioned, into different categories. So some people work on private institution inquiries, others work on community colleges, and others work on the four-year public schools. So it's really, really helpful when you type in the name into this field so we know what school we're working on. As you type it in, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use Baylor today only because I want to make sure it just pulls up a smaller list. But as you start typing, it'll just populate for you, so you don't even necessarily have to type in the full school. It'll just do it for you. Hope Baylor doesn't mind if y'all are on the call. I'm using you. Your contact reason. This is probably the most important because each one of these in the drop-down goes to a different area of our agency. So if you click anything but financial aid question, it is not going to come to financial aid services. So if it's related to an eligibility question or a loan update or a process or something institutional, you'll definitely want to select financial aid question. In the description, we ask for as many details as you can provide. Sometimes we'll get inquiries that just don't have enough, and we will end up calling the school, which is fine, but it's really, really helpful if you can put all of the details of your request in here. So 2 examples. One is if you're asking an eligibility question on something that you're dealing with at your school, maybe a kind of an off scenario, or maybe it's anything. If you can put that in there with all the different details and then what your questions are, then we'll reply to each one of those individually within our response. It can break it down a little bit more clearly. But again, sometimes we get stuff in and it's just not clear enough, and so it makes it difficult to give you a thorough response. On loan requests, you'll want to include the student's information, including their common line unique ID, so that we can align that with the proper loan. Please do not include social security numbers. You can include the last 4, but don't include the entire thing. We just want to make sure for FERPA purposes we don't have all that identifying information in the description. So when you send those in, again, more details the better, as long as it's not specific to a student, and then we can get it in our area as long as you submit financial aid question as your contact reason. You will put in all the information below that has the red asterisk next to it, and we do ask, even though the phone number is not there, a lot of times, again, we pick up the phone and we'll call you back because we'll have additional questions that we may want to talk to you about. So it's really helpful to include your direct line. And again, we ask for a direct line because sometimes we'll call the main number and not do a very good job navigating through to you, especially on peak times at the school. So we do request that you include that if possible. Once you submit it, it's almost instantaneous. It's within a few seconds it gets routed to our area where we then assign them out and we'll get back to you. So that's how you submit a contact us, and hopefully you've had good luck getting your responses back through that contact method. And let's see, we're going to move on to stay connected. So each one of these pages has a little explanation under it telling you what's available in that page. So on this one it says access to our calendar, subscribing to our listserv, following our financial aid advisory committee, and then of course our memos. So let's take a look at that page. So as soon as you open it up, we have started to publish and post our webcast presentations. So not only this video that we're recording right now, but also the PowerPoints for all of the prior ones. So you can see they go back to March. That was the first one, and we'll continue to publish them here for the time being. But each month we put the flyer that tells you the topics, and then we have a webcast survey that allows you to give us feedback on topics or what you did or did not like. You can put those on here and send those over to us. The memos section, we publish now a recent communications section, and this is really just the top, say, 8 to 10 memos. Previously, we had one long list, and it was just overwhelming people because we do send out a lot of notifications and memos. So now we just put the top 8 to 10, so you know these are the ones that are the most recent. And it doesn't limit us to a fiscal year, whereas before we had everything dedicated to a particular year. So this is just anything that's come out recently. If you need to find an old memo, they're still available at the bottom of the page. We archive the memos for 2 years at the bottom, and as you can see, I'll expand these, we have quite a number of memos that we publish each year, and here's the 19. So yeah, each year we post as that we go, and then as these become dated in the recent communications, we'll move them down under here. These are collapsible, so if you don't see them, you'll just want to expand the section. The Student Financial Aid Programs listserv, this allows you to receive the memos. So maybe you're on this call and you're saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't get those. I have no idea what you're talking about. But every week, I won't say every week, but almost every week, our area sends out reminders, notifications, important updates, and we do that through this state system called GovDelivery. And so in order to be included on that list, you do have to subscribe. Now I will tell you, if you're not in a director role, either assistant director or higher, we typically do not add folks to the broader director category. And we do that just to make sure that information is being filtered appropriately. If you're in a director role or manager role or anything like that, you can go on and fill this out, and right here on your title, this will tell us kind of which bucket we need to add you to. And we have a whole variety of buckets, but primarily we send things to the directors, and then we have a general listserv where we send things that we want everyone to be aware of, like for instance the webcast. So you'll want to fill this out and hit subscribe. And then our team here in Financial Aid Services, like I mentioned, we get that request and we will add you manually to the GovDelivery system. And then you should start receiving notifications the following day. Each year we produce a calendar. You may or may not be aware of this, but you can see we've got 3 years worth. And historically we produce a calendar for the whole year. And this year we decided we are going to release a calendar that aligns with the semesters. And so you'll notice we just published this calendar. If you didn't know, it's now available, and it's just a fall edition. We're doing this because sometimes it's hard to anticipate deadlines a year in advance, and what we were trying to avoid is changing deadlines or moving things around and then people have the wrong version. So this is going to be better because we can just release the deadlines for a 3 to 4 month time frame and then send out another one once it is available. So once the spring is available, we're going to move it to the top, and fall will be moved to the bottom. So you're still going to have all of them in there. We're just going to continue to add to it, if that makes sense. So you can see within here we have starting September 1st all the way through the holidays. You can see when the webcasts are coming, when FAS is going to be due, when it opens, just various closures for the coordinating board. So this is a really nice tool to have if you're an institution, so that you can keep track of when things need to be submitted, and then of course when we have limited staff, and just kind of general notifications to be aware of. And again, if you're curious, we have the prior 2 years if you ever want to compare to see if things moved or changed. The other thing under Stay Connected is Financial Aid Advisory Committee. I can't stress the importance of watching and being involved with the movement of this committee. Financial Aid Advisory Committee is made up of institutions, ISDs, and then a few other stakeholders such as the TASFA organization. And the purpose of this committee, and I'll go to their page, is really to collaborate and make decisions on state financial aid programs. And so it's a really great way to work together to come up with decisions on these programs, and they happen every few months, so it's a quarterly meeting. We just had one last week. You can see it's posted here. And they go through a variety of topics. So when you click on these meetings, you can see the meeting minutes, the handouts, you can read through them, and of course you can watch the broadcasts that was done last week and hear what people are saying from the institutions on the topics. So I do highly recommend, if you can join live, that's helpful. If you don't have time, then they're here for people to go back and listen to. So that is the Stay Connected page. Again, Stay Connected is really getting information, keeping people informed, making sure that all the stuff that we're publishing is communicated. So this is kind of our communication page. So going back to the main page again. So that was the first link. The second one is our program resources. When you click on this, we have all of the state programs here broken up by category. And then we have a comprehensive program guidelines for the last 2 years, which includes all of them in one document. So that's where you can find these. And I'll hop through these in just a moment. At the bottom of the page is where you can find the Texas application for state financial aid, or the TASFA. So we do keep several years up. As you can see, the 2021 is not posted yet. That will be available on October 1st. But you can see both the application, the Spanish and the English versions are here for the last 2 years. And so that's where you find those on this website. They're also available on College for All Texans. So let's circle back to these links up here. So each one of the programs that I mentioned on the first slide that talks about all the different categories, they're going to be found under these links. So under the grant programs, anything that's really related to Texas Grant is going to be right here. So we have our login to the CB Pass portal here. We have the allocations for the year, where you can click on the actual memo and see, sorry, not the memo, the allocation amounts, so broken down by school. All of this is public information, so that's why we have it out on our site so anyone can see that. We have our guidelines. Again, we have the last 2 years as well. We have how to request award history through the Move It system. So if you want to request award history, then there's the step-by-step instructions. We have the online return of funds form if you need to send us money back. This is the form on how to do that. And then right here is the private high school certification curriculum. This is, again, only for Texas Grant. So if you were wondering, this is also connected within our guidelines. You can see the same thing for these other 2 programs. I'm not going to go through those one by one, but that's how we have it broken down. So if you're ever looking for resources related to a grant program, this is going to be your best place to find that. So going back to these others, same thing. We have all the resources dedicated to each of the loan programs. So you'll want to go, if you are involved in one in particular, you can go check those out and see if there's something that maybe you've never known was out there before. So those are available. Work study and scholarships. We have our Texas College Work Study. We most recently just added Work Study Mentorship Program. We have both the allocations and brand new guidelines. So if you are not familiar with that program and maybe your school participates, you'll want to check out these. Top 10% scholarship will be coming down since the program is over, but they are still out there at this time. So if you need information for maybe an audit or any other historical reference, you'll want to take a look at those before we remove them. And then bilingual education scholarship program, this is where all these documents are housed. Lastly is the exemption and waivers section. We have the educational aid. We have quite a bit under here just because educational aid has guidelines, allocations, the application, and then we have dedicated institutional and student FAQs. So these are helpful if you have educational aid to print these for your students. A lot of students use these so that they understand if they even qualify for the program. So I don't know that a lot of schools realize that those are available. We do have them on College for All Texans, but we also post them here as well. Good Neighbor Scholarship exemption. We're looking into possibly changing that, since it's not really a scholarship, it's an exemption program that a lot of the schools participate in. So that's the instructions here and how the schools log in through CBPass. And lastly, we have a chart. We are working on updating the chart actually right now, but until then you can use this exemption and waiver chart. It's very helpful because it breaks down those 50 plus that I mentioned earlier, and it tells you whether it's mandatory or optional. It tells you the statute it can be found under, and just a variety of other little pieces of information. So if you've never seen this before, now you know where to find it. It's under the exemption and waiver section of our site. Going back to the main page again, I like to kind of go from the beginning so you don't get lost on all these pages. The third link down, frequently asked questions. These are broken down by topic, so you can see that it's all the grant programs. We have the loans, exemption and waivers, just like I said, we just went over them, but we have pages with frequently asked questions for each of those. So you can go through and see them and expand the ones that you want to read about. So I highly encourage that people use these. These have additional information outside of our program guidelines. So I don't know that a lot of people have been utilizing these, and we did do a thorough review of these before we launched them. So please take the time to go out and look at these because they're very helpful. Our learning resources, we are going to be updating this coming year. We're really going to be driving training and creating a lot of new modules and videos for people on how to do things. So that's just a heads up that we do anticipate having a lot of information on this page eventually. And the online resources, these are things like forms and our portals, and then of course our lovely FADS manual is up here. Our state funded campus-based report, that will be coming out in the next month or two. So if you are the one that is responsible for that, it has not been released yet, but it will be soon, and we will send out a memo once it's available. The forms I went through briefly on other topics, but user access is a big one. User access is going to be coming up soon. So each year, the financial aid services area sends out a comprehensive list of user accounts to the schools. And the reason we do that is to make sure that the people that we have here at the coordinating board are supposed to have access, either because their roles have changed, maybe we have turnover, people retire. So it's critical that we kind of work together to make sure that all the people that have access here are correct. So towards the end of each year, we do this big project where we send out all the names to the school, and then we have you update those if they're incorrect. So this the system access form, system authorization form, is what you will see when we send it out, and it allows you to communicate the changes back to the coordinating board. So if you've never seen this before, and you're new, this is also how you request access to our portals. The intro here talks about each one of the portals and what you can do within them. I'm going to go through those in just a moment. The director fills out this section and then fills in each of the people that need access, either to be added or removed. And then our move it section is down at the end. And then you submit the form, and like I mentioned at the very beginning of the webcast, our team here is the one that processes those requests to add the account in our systems. So I'm going to touch base on these portals very quickly. Again, mainly for new people because at this point I have a feeling people are overwhelmed with information. You might be like, how do I do that? Where do I go for that? So I'm going to break down these portals very quickly. Move It DMZ is what I call a mailbox. When a school wants to send information or data to the coordinating board, or we want to send data to you, we have to have a secure way to do that. We can't just email it back and forth. Plus, the files that we send back and forth are usually quite large. So Move It DMZ is what, like I said, a mailbox where schools can upload files into Move It. We pick up those files, we get our mail, and then we also send things back through Move It so that the institutions can download those. For example, loan files, we send FAD reports, we do additional data requests through Move It. So Move It is very important that the director have access to that so that you can make sure that you're receiving all the files that the coordinating board sends to you, and also so that you can send files to us. CBPass is a portal that allows institutions to request funds, and it also requests to return funds and also to run award history. So the CBPass portal is kind of a secure site that has different functions built into it. So as we continue to develop projects, we intend to start building things under the CBPass portal. So you'll want to make sure that if you don't have a login, that you create one of those so that you can have access to things like award history, FADs, and requesting money. HelmNet is our loan portal that allows institutions to look up the loan statuses, the applications, and other information, and it'll also allow institutions to certify loans online. So again, we have people sending in requests all the time for HelmNet. Those are really intended for the certifying official, but we also know that schools log in to look at the loan statuses through HelmNet. So that's how you do that. And then finally, we have our net price calculator portal that is updated once a year so that when students are shopping to go to school, they have the tool has to be updated each year based on institutions' data, and that's where the schools will log in to update that data is through this portal. And the second link here, these are the guidelines that kind of walk through all the steps of the net price calculator process. If you're on the call and you're wondering, well, when is that? We just concluded the net price calculator update for the year, which was done by June of this year. So it's not going to be due again until next year. So that is the website. I went through that fairly quickly, but I know that that was a ton of information. If you have questions about it or you have feedback about it, I would love to hear from you. At this time, I'd like to stop for just a moment just to ask people to start submitting questions. This is before I go into the next little piece. I just want to make sure that if people have questions on anything that I've discussed so far, that you can start typing those and that we can answer those before the webcast ends. So important dates, things that are happening. September 3rd, which has already passed, we did send out the English TASFA and we released it to institutions. And the reason we did that is because we had a request from a lot of schools who either have vendors or need to get it posted onto their website. They wanted that kind of the lead time to get it ready and make it accessible and get it online. So we did release that about a month early this year. So if you didn't see it, we did send it out. We did not post it online though. So you will not be able to find it on our website or on College for All Texans yet. You can only get it if you receive the notification. If you didn't receive it and you want a copy of it, please send that through Contact Us and we can forward you the announcement. September 30th is the Financial Aid Database Cycle 3. It will be opening on that day. As of today, we still have 47 schools that have not completed cycle 2. So that's a pretty large number of schools. So I wanted to let you know that you can't move on to cycle 3 until you've finished cycle 2. So those that have not been able to validate, please reach out. We're happy to support you and help you get those done. Because again, you not only can't start cycle 3, but any requests for funding that have been submitted cannot be processed until you're validated. So if you're waiting on state funds, those cannot be processed until you finish your cycle 2 validation. October 1st is when we will be posting the English and Spanish TASFA online for students. So that's when it's the normal time each year to align with FAFSA. We'll be posting those on College for All Texans, and where I showed you earlier, we'll have a third section that has the newer copies. Last month I went through the changes on TASFA, so if you're wondering kind of what it looks like, it was included in the announcement and then also on last month's webcast. So feel free to go watch that or read it to see what the changes were so that you're familiar and you can help guide the student if they have questions. On October 8th is the next FAS webcast. It'll be at 2 o'clock. So we'll be sending out the topics in advance. That also happens to be when the annual TASFA conference is going to be happening. So I wanted to make sure to let you know that I will be there. So if you're going to be at TASFA, I will be there not only presenting at the ABC workshop, but also be attending the state presentation. So I hope that a lot of y'all are going to be joining so that I can meet you in person. And then there will be other representatives and people coming from the coordinating board who will be there as well. So we hope you can make it to that. As I mentioned earlier, I always kind of boost the institutional number, 844-792-2640. I mentioned it's open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. We love to hear from y'all, not only to ask questions, but to give feedback, so please call us. And then lastly is my contact information, my email. The webcast survey, like I told you, is a way for you to communicate topics and kind of tell me how I'm doing. Are my webcasts still interesting, or are they a snooze? I need to know. So please, please, please feel free to give me your feedback. So that is the end of the presentation. I'm going to toggle back. We only have a few minutes, and I see some questions here. So I want to see what I can answer for you. Okay. So I'm going to look here. When will TEOG award history be available online? That's from Mary. They are working on the award history still. They had some updates going on even as of today. Once it's updated, Mary, we'll send out a notification, but it's still being programmed. They're still having some issues with it. Nora, it says, Leah, we're looking forward to y'all's oh, good. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that too. You'll have to come and find me. I'll have to say hello. Let's see, Tammy, I have access to CB Pass, but I can't figure out how to access student award history. What am I doing wrong? Depending on which program you're trying to access, right now only Texas Grant is available under award history. There was a prior presentation on how to do award history using Move It instead. So that is a workaround for schools that either need TEG or TEOG. It really depends. We've heard mixed feedback on which award histories are working online. So if you can't get it to work through the online CB Pass portal, I recommend using the Move It process, and we have had quite a few schools using that. So if you need some assistance, just reach out and someone can help you set that up. Any plans, Susanna? Any plans to expand the frequently asked questions? Yes, we can do that. That was our goal originally when we rolled them out. That being said, frequently asked questions when we did research, we found that it's really only supposed to have about 8 to 10 per topic. Otherwise, you start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So we will be looking at those again, just one, to make sure that they're current, and two, to add some frequently asked questions for things that come through more often. But yeah, if you have any recommendations, feel free to send those through on things that you're curious or you feel like would be helpful to other schools. Let's see, Tammy. I have not done the group. So what I would recommend, Tammy, is send through a contact us, and we can get back with you and walk you through everything one-on-one. That way we can get you in the right place. And then Carla Flores, are you able to add a frequently asked questions section for set-aside programs? I think we have a couple on TPEG, but yes, that's good feedback. We'll look at the other set-aside program and see if there's something we can add. What I would recommend is, if you have questions, specific ones, is go ahead and send them through Contact Us, because that's a lot of times where we review the questions to come up with those frequently asked questions. It's just the difficulty of the frequently asked questions is making them broad enough to apply to all schools, which is why we recommend using Contact Us. That allows us to look at your specific scenario and reply back, because what we were finding is with the Q&As that it looks like Giselle was asking about, people were applying the responses to their scenarios and didn't always apply. And then also they were getting outdated and people were still using them, and either rules had changed or procedures had changed. So it was just a compliance risk at that point. Let's see, Giselle, a lot of questions were removed that were really helpful for the Q&As. Are there any plans to add them somewhere on the website? So hopefully I just answered that through my previous response, but we do get a lot of questions on, can we get those back? Where are they? And we did pull those down because of the potential of compliance risks with people using the wrong responses, because things did change. When we read through them, a lot of them were outdated or no longer relevant. So we did use those when we did the frequently asked questions to try and find the ones that were asked the most, and that was kind of the basis for our current list. But I do definitely think that we can work on adding to them and reviewing those. So I will look at that with my team and see what we can do. Mary, it seems to me that the private school certification form is outdated. That form is generated by a different area of our agency, so I can follow up with them to see if it's wrong or if it's outdated, and if so, then I can get a new copy. So thank you for bringing that up, Mary. I will look into it. I want to say that I looked recently, but it may have been a different form. So again, I appreciate you pointing that out. I'll look into it, and if it is incorrect, we'll get it fixed. Anyone else? This is actually one of the longest webcasts. I was thinking this was going to be the shortest one I've had yet, and lo and behold, I'm such a chatty Cathy. I'm going on and on. So I think we're about done. If you have additional questions, feel free to send those through Contact Us. Again, my email is there. I do ask people use Contact Us just because that way, if I'm out of the office or anything, you can still get a response to your question. But for those who are going to be at TASFA, I'm excited to meet you. And of course, I will talk to y'all again next month. If you have topic ideas, send those through the survey. And outside of that, I hope y'all have a fantastic day. I thank you so much for joining me yet again. Thank you.